What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. We got a breaking news episode for you today. Tuesday, July 5th is the day as we record this live from Eugene, Oregon. I'm your host, Max Torres, and joining me on today's episode is Ducks Digest writer Graham Metzker. How we doing, Graham?
Doing good, man. Always good when Oregon locks down a big commitment like this one.
Absolutely. Well, that is the topic of today's show. Oregon going into the state of Washington to land elite 2023 cornerback Caleb Presley out of Rainier Beach High School in the Seattle area. Rainier Beach has become a hot spot for talent in the Pacific Northwest, and it is certainly a spot that the Ducks find themselves to be familiar with after signing 2022's number one offensive tackle, Josh Connerly Jr. So in today's episode of the pod, we are going to give our thoughts on what this commitment means for the Ducks, Dan Lanning, and the 2023 class. We are live on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres. So if you guys are here watching on the live show, definitely hop in the live chat. Let us know your thoughts on this latest commitment for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. And definitely feel free to throw some questions our way. We want to try to get as many of those as we can and try to answer as many as we can. And then if you guys are here watching on the replay, appreciate you guys stopping by to listen and talk some Ducks. But man, the recruiting trail is definitely the hot topic now with Dan Lanning and the Ducks picking up a little bit of steam here start July. Graham, what are your thoughts off top on this commitment?
Definitely off the top of my head, the big thing is Oregon going into Washington's backyard for real this time. I mean, Rainier Beach, right near Seattle, like you were saying. And Oregon's making it a habit at this point. You know, you were saying Josh Connerly in the 2022 class, not only number one in his position, but also the number one player in Washington. For Oregon to have back-to-back years where they have the number one player in Washington and both of those players signed or committed under Lanning, I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, it's big, no doubt, because with Oregon, right, Graham, it's no secret that for them to get where they want to go, competing for national titles, and then right now to get back to the playoff, they have to recruit nationally. Oregon is in a state that has been known to produce top-level recruits on a consistent basis, certainly not among the likes of California, Texas, Florida, but Washington has really been, a nice little state that has, I shouldn't say little state because what I'm trying to say is that they're really just producing a lot of elite talent now, kind of on a more consistent cycle. And, for Oregon fans to get Presley over the Huskies, I think that makes it a little bit sweeter.
Definitely. And I think you said it perfectly that Washington is, with this consistency, they are starting to have their name brought up with the Californias, the Texases, the Floridas. So really consistent talent coming out of Washington. And for Oregon to keep going and stealing it, it's definitely, if Oregon wants to get to the national stage, they should be able to start with a lock on like the West Coast. We've seen them go down to San Diego, the LA area. Going up north to Washington certainly doesn't hurt in the slightest.
Absolutely. Well, we have all your written coverage of this commitment. We've had it covered for a long time, actually, just Presley's recruitment. I mean, we've been talking to him throughout his numerous visits to Eugene, so you guys can definitely check those out. But we have the news story of his actual commitment. I was also able to speak with Presley before he went public with that announcement. So you can get Presley's thoughts on why Oregon was the call, as well as our class impact story, which are, of course, we're going to talk about here as far as the recruiting impact for Oregon, and then what kind of a player Presley ultimately adds to this Oregon Ducks roster once he gets to Eugene for the 2023 season. Kind of a little side note on just how significant this recruitment win is for the Ducks. I'm looking at the 247 rankings right now, and I know, Graham, you were checking these out. So Washington, I don't want to talk about them too much, but they were on a nice little streak on the recruiting trail among a bunch of other schools that have really popped off lately. Obviously, you have Notre Dame holding down that top spot, Ohio State, Texas, Miami is doing really well on the recruiting trail as well. So Washington is at number 20, and then this one commitment for Oregon moved the Ducks from 36, I believe it was 36 class in the 2023 class, all the way up to number 25. So I think, the kind of wait and see patient approach definitely seems like it'll be paying dividends for Oregon as they're starting to reap some of the rewards after bringing a lot of elite talent to campus for visits in June. And Presley was one of those guys.
Definitely. And like you said, Max, not to focus too much on UW. They are the losers today. But they have been on a tear. I was actually very surprised when I was getting the recruiting class information that Washington was ahead of Oregon before this commitment when I was checking, that they were ahead of Oregon on most streaming services. And that's because 12 of their 16 commitments have come since just June 20th. So they've been hitting the ground hard, and Oregon to get back in the game this way, I think, is the only appropriate response.
Absolutely. So a big commitment for the Ducks to kind of answer to some of these other big schools that are kind of starting off runs of their own. We're definitely going to talk about kind of what's next for Oregon, but for now, we just really want to focus on Presley, get into a little bit of an eval here. Got to give a shout out to my guy, Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher over at Irish Breakdown, covering the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and he is also a recruiting analyst with me at SI All-American. So wanted to get into some of Brian's thoughts just to give you guys a better idea of what kind of player the Ducks are getting here in Caleb Presley. So starting off here, this is again from Brian. Presley is one of the more physical cornerbacks on the West Coast. He has good size at 6 foot, 180 pounds, but he plays bigger than that, both in coverage and as a tackler. Presley plays with a tenacious style of play, and he's clearly a confident football player. Head coach Dan Lanning implemented aggressive coverage techniques at Georgia in both their man and zone concepts. He liked long, athletic corners that could play up near the line and be physical. That's true when playing zone, where they wanted to jam and reroute, or where they were playing press man. Presley fits that mold quite well due to his play strength and experience playing near the line of scrimmage. Presley is a quality athlete that is more instinctive and physical than he is explosive, but he makes a ton of plays due to his strength, high football IQ, and aggressiveness. He'll need to be efficient with his technique in order to maintain transition quickness, but his physicality helps him overcome any lack of elite athleticism. He gets his hands on a lot of footballs, and he can play inside or outside at the next level. Presley also has enough speed and athleticism to combine with his length and play strength to be an effective boundary corner. So, I mean, that sounds like a pretty sweet get for the Ducks with that great evaluation from Brian. And I feel like that's definitely, for me, Graham, the trait that sticks out the most has to be his physicality. I mean, this dude's just a dog. He's going to get his nose in there for any play. He's not afraid to tackle, and he really just kind of asserts himself as an alpha when it comes to playing on the high school circuit.
I totally agree. When watching Presley's highlight tapes, if you watch even just for a little bit of time, you'll see a few hit sticks. I mean, he really brings the boom from that cornerback position like you don't see too much. You kind of expect that a little bit more from a safety. And on that note, at 6 foot, 180 pounds, Presley is the exact same size as Tyler Turner, one of Oregon's safety commits. So the fact that his frame matches up better to a safety than a corner, I think says everything about that physicality that is great to have at any position on the football field, but especially at that corner, definitely set the tempo.
Yeah, and kind of what Brian was getting into is that maybe he doesn't have that top flight speed that is really such a coveted trait in a lot of defensive backs, but I think he definitely makes up for it with his technique and kind of his feel for the game. So even though that's obviously a really big trait that you want to have, that's not to say he's slow. It's just that it's not necessarily a trait that pops just as much as some of his other ones do on tape here. And another thing that's cool about this Presley commitment is Dan Lanning was just coaching a cornerback from Presley's neck of the woods in the national championship. That, of course, being Keely Ringo, who was an elite cornerback in the class of 2020, I want to say, maybe 2021. I talked to Ringo one time during his recruitment when the Ducks were still in the picture. The class is just evading me at the moment. So if you're Presley, you're looking at what Lanning was able to do with his corners in that amazing, historic, whatever adjective you want to use, that defense out there in Athens that was able to capture Kirby Smart's first national championship. So looks like the proof is in the pudding when you're looking at Presley's fit into Dan Lanning's defense.
Yeah, just the fact that another thing that gets highlighted a lot, I heard it in Driscoll's report, is the ball skills, the hand-eye coordination. At high school, he plays kick returner and wide receiver on top of cornerback, which is not unheard of by top recruits by any means. But that just tells me that he can make a play on the ball, which also will help make up for if the speed is not at that elite level.
Yeah, I think that's a big skill that always carries over. I feel like for defensive backs, if you find yourself playing wide receiver, you just kind of learn the ins and outs, the intricacies of the position, and that makes it easier to transition that to the other side of the ball. It'd be really cool if we saw more two-way guys at the college level. We out here in Eugene got a little taste of it last year with for the Ducks, but it's just hang in there. You got me, Graham?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Sorry about that. I'm going to see if I can close some of these windows and help out my connection a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. Try to bear with me here. Um, but yeah, just to go back to Presley, one of the cool things that stood out about his commitment when I was talking to him about why it was the Ducks, he was saying that Coach Lanning, Coach Tosh Lapoy, and Coach Demetrius Martin are an elite trio. And I think it just shows you how much faith these recruits have in the Oregon staff based off of the body of work that they've seen. Lanning, everyone wants to talk about Georgia, but Tosh has achieved a lot of success at the college and NFL levels. You want to look at Alabama, look at his time at Washington recently, also at Cal, staying out west. So I feel like there's a lot of potential here for this defense moving forward. When you add a guy like Presley, definitely a position that's important to add given the Ducks roster right now.
I totally agree with you. And I really like the points you're making and what Presley said really about that being a clutch trio, a key trio for the Oregon coaching staff. Obviously, Lanning is the head of it. He's a great recruiter, but both Lapoy and Martin are fantastic on their own right. For a little bit of context, Presley is the sixth highest ranked recruit that Martin has recruited, which means there are 5 guys that are better than the number one player in Washington. It just shows that Martin, he's up there with the best recruits, and Oregon is certainly happy to add him to the coaching lineup, and it's already paying huge dividends.
Yeah, Martin's definitely a very likable coach. I think just when you see the energy that he has, whether it's at practice or in press conferences, his whole saying is "yee DB pedigree," which is what Presley said when I was like, any message that you want to share after committing. So he just shouted out Coach Meat, who has had a long track record of success. You got to look at a coach that's been at just about half of the Pac-12, made coaching stops at just about 6 schools. So he's incredibly experienced. He's definitely worked with a lot of really good corners. I think he's a really strong developer of talent, seeing that he's maybe a little bit more veteran than Oregon's previous cornerbacks coach, Rod Chance. No slight to him, but just Martin's been in the game longer. So he obviously had a great relationship with Presley. And I think another aspect of the recruitment here, this commitment, let's talk about kind of how we think this affects Oregon in the long run, right? In the big picture. Let's look at Oregon's roster right now, specifically cornerback, where Presley is going to be playing. It's been an eventful offseason, specifically at the cornerback position. You lose Michael Wright to the NFL draft. And then so he's looking to hopefully get a shot, a pro career shot. And then you also lose DJ James, who returns back to his home state of Alabama to play for Brian Harsin and the Auburn Tigers. And then maybe one of the more surprising ones was Jalen Davies returning back to Los Angeles to play for Chip Kelly and the UCLA Bruins. So that room got real young, real fast. DJ James looked like he was in a prime position to be the new cornerback 1 for the Ducks. What do you think about how Presley kind of helps affect the roster shakeup here?
It's definitely needed. Oregon has been going really hard in getting that secondary in this 2023 class. They already have 5 recruits now committed that play some sort of defensive back, whether that's corner or safety. It's huge for them. Oregon did get Christian Gonzalez transferring in from Oregon, or I'm sorry, from Colorado. but it's a super young room, and it definitely hurts losing guys like DJ James. I'll always think of DJ James in a fond light, even if he transferred away for that huge pick that he had at UCLA. I was lucky enough to be there, so DJ James definitely hurts losing him. And yeah, they're going to be looking to a lot of guys to step up. I think Gonzalez, even though he's young, he sort of becomes that number one guy. But after that, it's not entirely certain.
Yeah, wasn't that just to go back to that UCLA game? Wasn't that the first time I met you, Graham?
Yes, sir, it was. Yep. Met in that UCLA press box, and a little bit later in the game, we were both down on the field to see DJ pick that pass. And the environment at the Rose Bowl down there was electric. I remember DJ came, he had the game ball. I think he held on to that picked ball ever since the quarterback let go of it. Um,
Yeah.
it was a great vibe down there with Cristobal and all the players, and certainly hurts to be losing a player and a guy like that, DJ James.
Yeah, got to give a shout out to the Rose Bowl press box because that was just like so nice. They had a bunch of really good food, and then getting to go down for the final minutes of that game was definitely a treat. And you could really that was just an atmosphere you got to soak up. Definitely glad I got to go there. A little bit more special for you too, being a SoCal guy.
Yes, sir, man. SoCal guy. Moved to Oregon, so I got friends that are around. I got friends at UCLA. It was personal, so it was a crazy day. It was a great day for sure. And the Rose Bowl, one of, if not the best, college football venues.
Yeah. So just to go back to, don't want to get too sidetracked here, but just to go back to the cornerback room for Oregon, Christian Gonzalez comes into this season. I feel like really he's got to be one of the guys with the most to prove on this team. Not because he hasn't already played at a high level, but because that's really what they need him to do. They're viewing him as a plug and play guy that's going to be able to come in and match up with whatever the opponent's number one wide receiver is. And I think that coupling him with some guys that are, they've kind of had some mixed success. I wasn't going to say necessarily proven commodities. The two guys that I'm talking about at corner being Triquez Bridges and Dante Manning. Cool little side note, Presley is the highest rated defensive back to commit to Oregon since Dante Manning, who garnered 5-star status kind of late down the stretch in the 2020 cycle. Excuse me. I got to slow myself down. With Manning coming from Kansas City. So Presley is the highest rated guy in this class now, but Oregon's secondary, particularly at corner, have a lot of young guys. You're hoping that Dante Manning can take that next step and maybe be that cornerback too. And I feel like I would maybe lean more towards him rather than Bridges, just because he's a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more explosive versus, Triquez is more of that lengthier guy, ball hawk. He was originally a safety. And he was still trying to kind of find his comfort zone as those guys kind of split CB2 reps last year behind Mikael Wright.
Yeah, I think that focusing on this season is really important because, yeah, Oregon is getting these defensive back recruits, but these are 2023 guys. They're not coming to help this year. So I think a lot has to be proven by the Oregon defensive backs for this off season, or I'm sorry, this season itself. And I feel like something that doesn't get talked about a lot is how a certain position group or how a team overall plays and how that affects recruiting. I think Oregon has been very strong producing secondary talent that's gone to the league for a couple of years now in a row. If Oregon's DBs and the defense, passing defense as a whole, is not up to snuff, then it can definitely hurt the recruiting game.
Yeah, the Ducks have had some really strong guys come through Eugene of late. Obviously, Javon Holland's got to be the crown jewel of the secondary now. With Patrick Chung retired and, some of the older guys, already been in the league for a while. And then you also have Diamador Lenore, Thomas Graham, Brady Breeze. So that's definitely been a spot for them that has that they've done really well at. And then Verone McKinley joins Javon over there in Miami. But specifically at corner, I really like if we're just looking at 2023, you figure that pretty much every cornerback should return. for Oregon after the 2022 season. That's one of the benefits of having such a young room. You don't have to plan for a whole lot of departures and try to kind of plug in those holes. But I really like the speed that the Ducks added in 2022. Obviously, you look at Jaleel Florence and Jaleel Tucker, who come up from San Diego, Lincoln High School. Jaleel Florence was an early standout in the spring, seeing that he had a big interception in the spring game, and then Jaleel Tucker was someone who actually stayed throughout the entirety of his senior year, so he could have one more track season. Can't fault the guy for that, but he's here in Eugene now to get ready for next season. So when you look at the speed that they have, and then you're bringing in some more ball hawking guys, aggressive guys like Presley, I feel like this sets up very nice for Oregon moving forward. I don't think we talked about other guys. Did we talk about other guys on the board at corner?
Not yet.
Okay. Do you want to take that one?
Definitely. One name that stands out when it comes to recruits and the cornerback position is Roderick Pleasant, I believe. Is that the right name? So, Yep, Roderick Pleasant is the number 12 cornerback in the nation, which is ahead of Presley. And he currently does not have, no one's predicted him to go anywhere just yet, but the colleges he's listed as warm for are Oregon, USC, and Boston College. Oregon is the only school in the Pac-12 to have a cornerback in the top 25 rankings for the 2023 class, and they've got two of them. So it's hard to say if Oregon has room in the cornerback room for Pleasant, but he's a fantastic prospect, to say the least.
Yeah, so I think we were talking before we hit record here, Graham, that Matt Pallage and Demetrius Martin have really done a good job of just filling out the secondary in this 2023 class, and I think they're bringing versatility and a good blend of multiple skill sets and size and length, speed. But Roderick Pleasant, that's a guy no one's going to turn down. I mean, he is truly a game breaker, game changer with his speed that he has. He's made headlines throughout the offseason as an elite sprinter for Sarah. I believe he broke the 100-meter record in California with like some kind of like a 10.14. It was definitely like 10.2 or below. That was crazy. So he's definitely an elite player that's going to have a home anywhere. And Oregon's had a really good run in his recruitment so far. He's just a guy who doesn't tend to talk as much, kind of keeps his cards close to the vest, and hasn't been crazy active on the recruiting trail. But you've got to figure if there's some elite LA guys that Oregon could have to battle SC for, that's someone that comes to mind without a doubt. But there's a couple other guys here at corner that the Ducks are still in the running for. I think most notably right now you have to look at Josiah Wagner out of Spanaway Lake in Washington. Once again, like we were talking about, Washington keeps getting these pretty solid guys that they send to the next level. And the reason you got to keep an eye on him is because Wagner placed Oregon in his top 4 not too long ago, back on June 28th specifically. He placed Oregon in his top 4 alongside Cal, so another Pac-12 school, Oklahoma, and Texas. So I don't know. I haven't talked to Wagner during the recruiting process, but I think that Oregon's done a really good job recruiting that state, obviously. So that's something you got to keep an eye on. There was one more guy I thought I was going to mention. I was going to maybe say Javian Toviano, but that's like a super, super high profile guy in Texas. And I can't remember what his top schools are looking like right now. So we're just trying to shed some light on other guys that you want to keep an eye on if you're an Oregon fan following cornerback recruiting. But the Ducks are definitely picking up steam on the trail at a good time. I don't know if you saw it, Graham, but I feel like some Oregon fans, they were kind of down on the recruiting efforts. They were saying like, oh, June was kind of a waste, or it just wasn't really like, why aren't we getting commits? Like, why aren't we seeing anything? What's going on? Were you seeing that? I was seeing that all over my timeline.
I was definitely seeing too much criticism, we'll say. I think Oregon right now, especially in the later weeks of June before the recruiting dead period, which is happening right now, which also I feel like is a pretty solid explanation for why it's been a bit of a downturn. But Oregon getting all those 5-star, all those high profile recruits on campus a couple weeks ago, like Mateo Ugalele, Jaden Wayne, who was the number 1 player in Washington until he decided to go to IMG in Florida. I don't understand the criticism, to be honest, Max. I think that Oregon's been doing everything they need to do, and today is just another example.
Yeah, I think that the timing of this commitment is really good for Oregon. Their second commit in the month of July, which is a dead period, like you mentioned, Graham. So you bring in all those top tier guys throughout the month of June, and now is prime commitment season, and you're looking to really just get those dominoes to keep falling. And I think that that's why the timing of this is good for Oregon, and it bodes well for them. Got a question from Dennis. Is Caleb a 5-star? Caleb Presley is not a 5-star. He's actually a high 4-star prospect. I like to use the 247 Sports composite. That's just kind of what I've been using for the longest time since I've been in the business. So he's rated a 4-star, 0.9633. That's good for number 78 prospect in the country, number 9 corner, and like we said, top player in the state of Washington. So I'm trying to think of anything else that I wanted to say just on this Presley commitment. Another thing that is of note with Presley's commitment is that he is going to be enrolling early. So that's kind of a nice little development for Oregon, seeing that that's kind of the trend that we're seeing in college football. Heck, some guys are even kind of reclassifying still, not for Oregon, but just we see it. We see it, all throughout college football that these guys, that reclassifying is not something that's new. But if you're Dan Lanning and this Oregon coaching staff, you got to figure you want to get as many of those guys on campus to try to get them in, get them ready, get their bodies ready for the college level, get them in the playbook, build those relationships, get them comfortable just with being college students. So I think the fact that Caleb Presley is going to be an early enrollee is definitely a good sign for Demetrius Martin and the rest of the staff.
Definitely. Early enrolling, guys like Noah Sewell have done it in the past. I think Justice Lowe did it this year for Oregon. He played in the spring game. It's a new part of college football relatively, but it's definitely a necessary part, I think. And when you're a player like Noah Sewell was, hopefully like Presley was, then early enrolling is no issue because you're already ready to go and compete at that next level.
Absolutely. So we'll see Oregon probably continue that trend of getting guys to enroll early. We're going to take a quick break for those of you listening to us on podcasts. So make sure you guys stick around. We will have more recruiting insight on the other side. You're listening to the Ducks Dish podcast. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Ducks Dish podcast. I meant to say welcome back, but words just get jumbled in my mouth sometimes. But welcome back to the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, talking with my guy, Graham Metzker, fellow writer with me over at Ducks Digest. And we're breaking down the commitment of Caleb Presley to Oregon. And then now we're kind of shifting into maybe some more broad spectrum stuff, kind of what else is going on in the world of college football, college athletics, recruiting. Obviously, the big topic right now has been conference realignment after USC and UCLA bolted from the Pac-12 for the Big Ten. We are getting some questions here in the chat, so I want to try to go and address them. This question coming from Jeff. Jeff asks, who's next in your opinion? Yeah, I think, I'm going to say that the biggest person that everyone wants to keep an eye on right now is Dante Moore, right? The 5-star quarterback out of Detroit. He was recently named the SIL American MVP at the Elite 11. Granted, that competition did not feature Nico Iamaleava or Arch Manning, but I don't say that to take away from what Dante accomplished. He is a tremendous passer and is in the conversation, I think, from a lot of industry experts for potentially the top player in the class of 2023. But I feel like Dante should be someone that a lot of people should keep their eyes on. After Avery Johnson committed to Kansas State today, it really looked like those were the two guys that Oregon still had kind of in mind when it comes to grabbing a grabbing a quarterback in this 2023 class. And the quarterback dominoes are incredibly significant. We're seeing it with Miami when they got Jalen Rashada. We're seeing it with Texas when they got Arch Manning. So I think that Dante would probably be someone that I would think about. I honestly haven't gotten too tapped into that recruitment, unfortunately, but I'm going to keep working to see what sources I can talk to try to get some intel on that. But if I had to go with a guy that I'm probably a little bit more confident on, I would either say Micah Benuelos, the offensive lineman out of Kennedy Catholic in Burien, Washington. He was recently in Eugene at the end of last month on that massive recruiting weekend for his official visit to Oregon. He's down to a final three of Oregon, Texas A&M, and USC. Graham, I'm not sure if you've been able to watch any of Micah's tape or if you kind of have a beat on him, but we were talking about Washington, so it'd certainly be nice for the Ducks to kind of continue cleaning house in that state.
It definitely would be, regardless of who the player is. Another Washington native coming to UO is always a positive for Ducks and Ducks fans. As far as Micah Benuelos goes, I think he's a bit more unknown than some recruits that we see. I feel like in today's high school football game, the recruiting game, everyone's got all the footage, all the stats ready. And I think Micah Benuelos is a little bit different than that. Not too many teams are recruiting him, but Oregon and some of the bigger schools in the country are in on him. So it'll be very interesting to see where he goes, how he does once he's there. Very interesting prospect and another Washington guy that is on Oregon's wish list.
Yeah, so with a little bit more of the backstory for Micah, I met him and saw my first look at him when I was at that UC Report Elite Underclassmen Camp in Oakland back in May. He actually took home offensive line MVP honors, so that was a pretty stacked pool of offensive linemen. I'm trying to think of the other one of the other big linemen that was there, but I'm totally blanking on his name. I'm going to see if I can scramble and find it. DeAndre Carter. Okay, DeAndre Carter was also at that camp. He's just a massive human being, 6'4", 340, playing at a modern-day high school in Santa Ana. So Micah definitely stood out as one of the top performers at that camp. A little bit undersized, I feel like, compared to some of your more big-time offensive linemen, but I don't say that to slight him at all. He's listed on 247 at 6'2.5", 290. But I think that I just love the fight that he plays with. That's a guy who's super physical. He moves really well for an offensive lineman. And he was kind of surprised when I was talking to him that more SEC schools hadn't kind of gotten into the picture with him. And I was kind of asking him about his thoughts on the recruiting process. I always like to ask guys that, see just kind of where their head's at with everything. Because it's a really unique experience that they get to go through. Obviously, I didn't get to go through that. Can't get my hair to stay here. There we go. But yeah, he was just saying that I feel like more SEC schools should probably be given a look at his talents. But just to give you guys a little bit more insight on kind of what I'm hearing when it comes to Micah Benuelos and what he told me, because I talked to him after that visit, was just the relationships with Adrian Clem and Coach V. I need to look up his last name because I feel like I can never say it. Vianney Talamivao. He was one of the newer hires for Oregon's offensive line. He was saying that those two guys are like different offensive line coaches. And I asked him about the time that he got to spend there on his visit. And he said it just reassured me of kind of, the vision that they had for the program and the relationships that he has with those two guys. He said that Dan Lanning's on that national championship mindset. That was the quote that really stuck out to me. But Texas A&M is definitely a school that he's really liking, and he likes that big boy mentality, that big time football at A&M that you kind of get with the SEC. But he was also at USC for their massive recruiting weekend. When they also had a bunch of 5-stars in town, and they had breakfast at Crypto.com Arena, formerly known as Staples Center. So it's just kind of cool to see some of the ways that Lincoln Riley is rolling out the red carpet for the Trojans. I feel like Oregon's probably leading here, but July 8th is the date that we have for Benuelos right now. All right, let's see here. Um, um, hold on. Let me see what we got here in the comments. Um, oh, we got Gary Metzker in the show. Shout out Graham's dad. Gary said newspapers in SoCal are saying that UCLA athletics is in big time debt, and that is why they need the Big Ten move. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any sources on this in particular, but this move was a huge money grab by USC and UCLA. I feel like both of these schools are pretty solid overall when it comes to their athletic departments. USC's obviously had more success recently in football, I think, big picture than UCLA has, at least in my lifetime, winning a couple national championships under Pete Carroll. But UCLA basketball has obviously done really well. I feel like they usually do well in women's basketball and baseball as well. But yeah, we've been talking all about this realignment stuff and just how detrimental it is for the Pac-12 to lose a brand, lose a school like UCLA, which I believe you told me you grew up rooting for.
Yeah, I think everyone growing up in SoCal, either they get sided to one way or the other, whether it's USC or UCLA. I don't know if I'm a fan, but I like UCLA more than USC growing up for sure. First of all, Pops, thank you for coming and checking in, commenting. I think there's no doubt that UCLA's football program is in the red, in the negative, just in the way that they have looked in the recruiting. Washington, Oregon, USC are all among the top schools in the nation right now for these upcoming recruiting classes, and UCLA is not. So I'm sure when UCLA was presented with this deal, it was a pretty easy call.
Yeah, I mean it's clear that the way that this move just caught the Pac-12 and so much of the country just totally off guard. It's pretty clear. I think you could say what I've heard some people saying that USC and UCLA had this move in the works for a while. But UCLA is heading to the Big Ten in a couple years. They're entering 2022 off of their best season in a while on the field under Chip Kelly, who I think they just recently signed to a contract extension. You got DTR back, Zach Charbonnet back. Chase Cota obviously made his way north to come back home to the home state of Oregon. So I think that it's shaping up to be a really good year for UCLA, and I'm excited to see how they do. Got some more questions that are coming in, so keep sending those in to us, guys. Larry asks, hey, Max, glad to see Oregon's doing well still. Are the Ducks ready to join my Utes in the Big 12 where they care about football? Oh man, this is obviously the big question right now about which conference is the best fit for Oregon, and really everybody's kind of making their case, right? And any Pac-12 school is kind of wondering now. We're seeing all these statements about how we're so dedicated to the health of the conference, and we're gonna do we're in media rights negotiations. I think is what the statement today was. Like, okay, we're ready to, begin these talks immediately. It's like, you should have already been doing this. They're saying that they're open to, any and all like expansion discussions right now. But I personally don't think that Oregon should go to the Big 12. I think it's a solid backup plan. If I'm Oregon, it's kind of Big 10 or bust is my perspective on things. I think that obviously, if Oregon were to go to the SEC, that would be another premier brand for the SEC to add. Obviously, that's even more challenging than the Big Ten, right? When it comes to geography, certainly less winnable than the Big Ten, but you're also getting tested at a much higher rate, I think, with the quality of teams that you have in the SEC. But I think the Big Ten is the way to go, especially since they have some really good basketball teams as well. Obviously, in the SEC, you got schools like Kentucky and Arkansas that have both been doing really, really well. Auburn as well. But I just think logistically, especially after having USC and UCLA join the Big Ten, kind of figures that it makes sense to keep Oregon as a team that as a travel partner out west. So I think that the Utes find themselves in an interesting spot because their program is clearly on the rise when it comes to football, and football is the sport that's driving the boat here. But I don't feel like they have as a solid overall of an athletic department as Oregon does. Not trying to take any digs at Utah. That's just my thought of it. I feel like that's another thing that makes Oregon really attractive to a lot of conferences and just nationally. It's because they're not really bottom feeders in any one sport.
I definitely think that's a great point. Oregon, I think, is among the most consistent when it comes to all sports out of any school in the country. We talk about USC and UCLA, they're good at football, UCLA is good at basketball, but when you look across the board to all of the sports, I think you would be surprised how many times Oregon is beating those teams. Um, but it's just so tough to keep up. These past couple days have been insane with the conference realignment rumors. I think today the rumor is the Big 12, like we're talking about right now. Um, and it's just so tough to say what makes these decisions. That's what I get tripped up on, whether it's money, location. Some people say that academics is not being thought of enough when it comes to, bringing in money, which is obviously a huge decider at the end of the day. So it's just very hard to follow what these conferences are looking for when adding a new team.
Yeah, I think these conferences can talk all they want about you want to have a school that has good academics, but I feel like that's clearly not the prime focus, the premier focus here, the main focus. It's obviously money, and you want to have schools that are going to be appealing to a national audience. There you go with Oregon, a school that people are going to want to watch. But the media rights are obviously going to be one of the biggest hurdles for Oregon. I mean, how many times? I can't even tell you how many times I've been trying to watch an Oregon game on Pac-12 Network, and it's just you have to jump through so many hoops and look at other streaming sites. So it's definitely a messy deal. D-Rock Irish, kind of one of our newer recurring guests, viewers. He asked any projected timeline for a Dante Moore verbal commitment. No, we talked about that a little bit earlier, just how he's been very quiet when it comes to his recruitment. Obviously talked to some people that were out there at the Elite 11 in Los Angeles. I wasn't able to be there, unfortunately, but he's not a big guy when it comes to being very vocal or even like posting super frequently on social media. It was cool how the Ducks brought out Marcus Mariota for Dante Moore's unofficial visit, definitely pulling out all the stops there. Not the first time that they've done that. They did that for DJ Uiagalelei, who ultimately ended up at Clemson. So that was definitely a bummer for Oregon, but it kind of feels like it could come at any time right now. But I think when we're talking about Dante Moore, I want to actually kind of use that recruitment since it's like the biggest one right now for Oregon, I think, while they're waiting in the balance to see what's going on, to transition into our next question that comes from Dennis. Dennis says, I just hope Oregon gets its conference alignment issues figured out soon. Recruiting prowess is hanging in the balance. Yeah, that's definitely what it feels like with all of this. That's why I said I sent out a tweet earlier today, just asking people, like, hey, put yourself in the shoes of some of these big recruits. What are you kind of thinking? How does it make you reevaluate your recruiting process? Because especially if you're a quarterback, that's the most important position on the field. Oregon's been able to recruit 5-star quarterback talent, but Ty Thompson hasn't really seen too much of the field lately since coming to Oregon. But if I'm Dante Moore, if I'm a recruit that's looking at Oregon, I don't think that any of the positives that you already had with Oregon go away, right? You're still going to a school with the strongest relationship with Nike, a school that's starting to put guys into the league at a higher clip, as we were talking about earlier in the show, in the secondary. And honestly, that's what I was thinking about a little bit more these past couple of days. I don't know if you remember during NFL draft season, I was saying that NFL development and NFL production is Oregon's greatest recruiting tool because they haven't won a national championship. I don't think that national championship is a huge deal breaker, but that's obviously a massive bonus. But you're starting to talk to more recruits these days, Graham, and they want to get to the league. That's like a big box that they want to check off. So I think that obviously just this limbo kind of a state doesn't help them, but I don't think that that Oregon's going to be any less attractive to recruits than maybe it already was, unless you maybe stay in the Pac-12. That's obviously, I don't think that's an option. People are, maybe I think I need to discuss it a little bit more, but I don't think staying in the Pac-12 is an option. And I don't really think that the Big 12 would be a good call either.
Yeah, Dennis, you're asking the question that's been on my mind ever since this whole thing started. And I'm sure it's on the mind of all the recruits that are interested in Oregon. It makes me wonder with a guy like Caleb Presley, who committed right now, did he have time to think about all of this? And did that factor into the decision? It's impossible to know. But I'm definitely curious about how recruits feel about it. I really like, Max, what you said, that Oregon's biggest recruitment tool is sending guys to the NFL. With the transfer portal being so prevalent as it is today, guys' main goals, like a lot of players' main goals when going to college, is to show their talent and transition it into the next level into the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the NFL production is such a, it's such a fun thing to see, but you can't just send guys to the league. You need to have guys that carve out roles, that become tops at their position or in that conversation. I mean, I I bet that Dante Moore is hearing a whole bunch about Justin Herbert this year, right? I mean, he just absolutely exploded once he got to the NFL, and I think he's in that conversation firmly, very firmly, for like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. So you know that he's hearing a lot about Herbie, who just lit it up at Oregon. But I think you also don't have to become known for developing a certain position like a lot of schools have, in college football. I think that like Alabama has obviously been known for their receivers. Ohio State has been known for their receivers. Schools like LSU and Florida have been known for their defensive backs. LSU even calls themselves, they have that hashtag NFLSU, which is just so sick, in my opinion. But yeah, I think regardless of what positions you're developing, you just want to be known as an NFL factory in general. But I mean, the longer this drags out, I think I don't think it's hurting Oregon, but they with recruits. But if you're a recruit, I can understand wanting to have some clarity in terms of where is Oregon going to end up playing. Albeit, I think the earliest it would happen I'd imagine would have to be 2024 because that's when USC and UCLA are making that move. You got me, Graham? You there?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't know if you had anything to say with that one.
I think that it's just going to be a waiting game. Like someone said here in the comments, I know that Oregon's AD, Rob Mullins, I know that Oregon's boosters, they don't want to see Oregon fall into irrelevancy. They don't want to see them fall out of the national picture that Oregon has been able to be into, or at least their share of it. It's really tough to say, when these conferences are going to be open to new members, whether Oregon could get in on that 2024 season. Definitely not before. But yeah, as far as the timeline, as far as who can get in, all of the realignment, whether the Pac-12 is really all solidarity, all together and looking for new things, we don't know the truth until we get that bombshell report like we did with USC and UCLA.
Yeah, and there's been some reports out there, I think, in the past couple of days about the Big 12 being in quote deep discussions with the Pac-12 to bring over some schools. I think I want to say that was Dennis Dodd that reported that, but I'm not taking credit for that report myself. But that's kind of been the one that's been making the rounds, right? You have schools like the Arizona schools, as well as Utah and Colorado. You got to think geographically that makes a tremendous amount of sense for the Big 12. And then UW and Oregon are kind of looking in on the outskirts as well as maybe some schools that are in the conversation there. I just feel like the Big 12 isn't that strong of a conference. Overall, they were already kind of an afterthought. I'd be curious to get people's thoughts on where the Big 12 and the ACC stack up. Obviously, the ACC has Clemson, which has been to the playoff. But that they had a down year last year, so maybe a little bit murkier of a picture in the ACC. Had a cool comment here that I wanted to touch on to kind of drive some more discussion here. The Slayer says this game will be dramatically different in 5 to 7 years, and Oregon can hang and get a seat at the new table. We all just got to be patient and watch. I don't feel our guys in suits are going to let the O get left out. And that's kind of how I feel as well. I think that Oregon is just too big of a brand, too big of a school. I feel like regardless of where people grow up, I'll talk to recruits as Oregon continues to push nationally, right? Guys in Florida, guys in the South, wherever they're growing up, they'll tell me so many times, "Oh, Oregon is a dream school. I grew up watching Oregon." Granted, that doesn't mean squat at the end of the day more times than not. I've heard that a million times, but it just goes to show you that Oregon reaches everywhere in the country, and a lot of these kids are still going to watch Oregon and grew up watching Oregon, and I think that's definitely a good thing for them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, just like this comment is saying, Oregon, not only like do the administrators, the people in charge at Oregon, not want to see them get left out, but um, I also feel like Oregon has a few cards hidden back that they can play. Obviously, if you read John Canzano, he implies a lot that Phil Knight will have something to do with this. And it's definitely something to keep an eye on. He did make a bid for the Blazers for $2 billion. So you got to think if he cares that much for the Blazers, certainly maybe he cares that much for his Ducks, who he's donated so much to.
Yeah, and Phil Knight's another person that you got to consider because he's obviously the donor, the face of the university when it comes to the sports space, the athletic space. But I think I think there was another piece that Canzano wrote or someone wrote about how Phil Knight can help save the Pac-12. If I'm Phil Knight, I'm just saying, you guys kind of got yourself into this mess. You can't look to me to try to save the day for you. If I'm Phil Knight, I'm 100% focused on Oregon and just making sure that they're in a good spot right now. Because it's an interesting thought, right? We found ourselves asking this question during the coaching search. How does Phil Knight's age factor into the equation here? Do you take more of a proven guy who maybe kind of has a high floor, lower ceiling, a la Chip Kelly, Kalani Sitake, Justin Wilcox in particular, or do you try to make that splashy hire that can really kind of try to take this program to the next level and has that recruiting history like they did with Dan Lanning? So I don't feel like if I'm Phil Knight, I'm not worried about the Pac-12. I'm only worried about Oregon. But I totally agree with this comment. I feel like Oregon's not going to get left out, but it's definitely a little crazy just to see more the longer this goes without getting an answer. I feel like there's no kind of time frame right now, which is what makes it pretty freaky. We got a question here from Gerard that looks like some people are giving the thumbs up to in the comment section. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this one and let's see what we got here. So Gerard asks, do you think that when and how many recruits do or do not commit to Oregon is a sign of the confidence of what they are hearing from coaches of where Oregon will end up after realignment? This is a really good question because I think there's definitely going to be those recruits that just know that Oregon is big time football, right? Even though the Pac-12 has been a joke, but I think kind of what Gerard's getting at here is, are we going to maybe be able to, use recruiting and the results that they get on the recruiting trail to kind of, gauge how things are looking in terms of what they're hearing. But I don't know if I'm an Oregon coach right now, I wonder what they're saying. Like, oh yeah, it looks like we're going to be going to this conference, or it's like, hey, I would imagine we're still waiting for answers. We don't have that clarity right now, but we know that our guys at the top are doing everything they can to put you guys in a good situation. Something kind of vanilla like that. But I don't feel like right now. I feel like it's a little bit too early to use recruiting results to gauge kind of where things are headed. But it'll be really interesting to see how it does kind of follow along with what we're seeing, because obviously USC and UCLA are going to be using that. Hey, we're headed to the Big Ten, so you want to play big time football? Come play for us.
I definitely agree with your point, saying that it won't affect the recruits just yet. This is still very fresh. And I don't think that this will have an impact when guys have been dedicating a year around there to finding the right school. So I don't think it'll affect just yet. But for some weird reasons, kind of off the wall, this question reminded me of when Mario Cristobal was still going on recruiting visits with Oregon, even though he was about to become the Miami head coach. I remember he was with Jaden Wayne, meeting up with him, and I just wondered, oh, Cristobal, you're going to Miami. I'm sure you said that to him. And now Miami's big in the Wayne recruitment. So I think all of this to say, when a coach knows something, a recruit will know it too. These coaches will use anything they can to get these guys to their school. So I think that in a little bit, we can start to use the recruitment to see how Oregon will do with the realignment if we haven't already figured it out.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about Cyrus Moss, because the Pac-12 championship was in Vegas. Cyrus was at Bishop Gorman. He was going to go to Oregon, I feel like, if Cristobal stayed. But that was like the question. Like, once I got Cyrus on the phone, Cyrus Moss was definitely one of the most insightful guys that I've talked to since I started covering recruiting. But that was one of the things that I asked him, and it was, from what I remember, he was kind of saying, it gave me vibes that he was saying he was going to stay at Oregon, but that obviously wasn't the case. That those rumors and the smoke got pretty crazy of him heading to Miami, Mario, that is, after that game. But I like your point there. And it does kind of feel like, Wayne might be Miami's to lose now that he's making that move out to IMG, but Oregon has put in a tremendous amount of work on that recruitment. Just got a couple more minutes here. We want to get to a little bit more of your questions as we wind down here on the Ducks Dish podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're tuned in, make sure, reminder, smash that like button, smash the subscribe button, and make sure to share this with all your friends, family, and other Duck fans. But I'm just looking through what we have here as far as the comment section goes. If anything stands out to you, Graham, let me know. I'm just kind of scrolling here after that last question from Gary. This is kind of cool. Mikey G said, food for thought. I was in an Ohio State space today and asked Carnell Tate whether he would like to see Oregon join the Big Ten. Paraphrasing, yeah, I'd love to play against my bro Dante. Maybe he's tipping his hand a little bit. I don't think we can take too much into that, but obviously some more excitement around that recruitment. Ducks also landed in the top 3 for 5-star running back Richard Young out of Florida. Other schools there being Alabama and Georgia, so that would be a massive recruiting win if they were able to get Young. Gerard with another good question here. If all caps on purpose, the Pac-X were to survive, I like the X there because we don't know how many teams are actually going to be here. What schools can they bring the media markets that can replace LA? Boise State, BYU, Fresno State, Baylor. Any school west of the Mississippi, be realistic. I think those schools are all ones that I would consider for sure. If I'm Baylor, I feel like I'm really, picking up steam under Dave Aranda after winning the Big 12 last year. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that right. Baylor won the Big 12 last year. And then you have Texas and Oklahoma head into the SEC. So if I'm Baylor, I'm kind of looking at the situation like, oh, look at this. I'm like, now's my time to kind of be top dog in the Big 12. But anytime you can bring in a Texas school, that's good. Fresno doesn't really seem like that big of a market, but they are a more attractive Mountain West school. BYU obviously has a huge hold over the state of Utah, whether it be big time basketball there as well, probably maybe even more so than their football team. But those fans are incredibly passionate. Boise State, not a huge market there either. What other schools west of the Mississippi? I mean,
I would say maybe San Diego State comes to my mind because they're also very good at basketball. Maybe you could go UNLV if you're trying to get that Las Vegas media market.
Yeah, no, I mean, Vegas is like a booming sports market right now, with the Raiders there, obviously. I think they have a WNBA team there. I want to say maybe I'm blanking
the
on
Aces.
that. The Aces. Maybe we could see the A's move there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Oakland A's moved there, just because, I mean, that they haven't been that great on the field, and it just looks like the city of Oakland, county of Oakland, doesn't have a lot of support for them. And maybe it just makes sense to pair them up with the Raiders. But I mean, that's definitely a big evolving market. So I think that the market makes sense, but I mean, UNLV is trash, man. I mean, I don't know how many fans they're really going to bring. If we're being super honest, maybe that was too hard of a word, but UNLV has not been doing very well. So yeah, I think we're at the hour mark. We started at the top talking about Caleb Presley and that huge commitment and a lot of, recruiting superlatives and what's to come for Oregon, possibly down the line. And any other, final remarks from you, Graham? It's been great having you on.
It's been a great show today. It's been really fun getting to interact with all the questions, all the viewers live. So thanks to you guys for tuning in. It's a big win for Oregon today. You can't forget that. I know that it's hard to we get caught up these days, with the realignment. There's a lot of question marks, but today is a good day for the Oregon Ducks. Let's remember that to sign off this show.
Yeah, big recruiting win for the Ducks on the recruiting trail, landing Caleb Presley out of Seattle, Washington. That's Graham Metzker. You can find him on Twitter at Graham Metzker. He's also doing a lot of awesome writing for us over at ducksdigest.com. He's getting more into the recruiting side of things, which has been really fun. He has a recent update with Terrence Green, big-time Texas defensive lineman that has Oregon in his top 5. So you definitely want to read that, as well as an update with Blake Nicholson, who placed Oregon in his top 3 alongside Florida State and UCLA. So got to go plug those and give Graham a shout out there. And then if you guys want to find more of me, you know where to find me. I'm on Twitter at that name right there on your screen, at mtorresports. And then kindly ask that you guys smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, and make sure that notification bell button so that you out on any future live here on the YouTube channel at Oregon Football Max Torres. But case in point, Ducks go back into the state of Washington, snag the number 1 recruit in the 2023 class out of Washington. Caleb Presley will be a Duck. That'll do it for us on the Ducks Dish podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.